So for years, we've been told that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. Previously, it was, more of an estimate than anything, but we were pretty much given, this is the solid number, 13.797 billion years, using the Lambda CDM concordance model. Essentially, this is all predicated on the idea of redshift. And redshift is essentially completely explained in this theory by the idea that the universe is expanding. The universe expanding comes from the idea that the universe started at a single point known as the Big Bang, a singularity. And of course, the only way to wind everything we see back to, the Big Bang is, it exploded outwards. We have this expansion, and that is what is causing the redshift we see in light. No other factors at all. This works if you don't question it. And that's the problem with current science, as I've highlighted in my previous video where I talk about, we need to challenge the science. Current astrophysics, current cosmology, current, quantum physics, all these different subjects have moved away from the idea that you form a theory and that you spend all of your time and energy trying to prove it wrong. And that's how you find the truth. Instead, we seem to observe reality, and then when we can't figure out why it is in such a way, we try to explain away the reality that might question our theories, that might challenge them. I mentioned that I was talking about this in the comments on YouTube of a video, and someone literally said that the process of science is to question what we see so that we disprove it in favor of the theory, so that we don't throw away the theory. This is mind-boggling to me because this is the opposite of how actual science works. You form a theory, you constantly question it. When you have new information, new observations, you use those to also challenge or question the theory, to prove it wrong. The only way you find the truth is to constantly try to prove yourself wrong, and whatever's left must be the truth. So James Webb Telescope launches, and we start seeing things in the early universe that just don't make sense. Highly developed galaxies or that have formed apparently 300 million years or so after the start of the universe at the Big Bang. And of course, this doesn't make sense because the formation of stars is supposed to have occurred at this point, not entire complex galaxies, well-developed compact galaxies, no less. So this is a little bit, a couple weeks old, but I kind of sat on it for a minute. But finally somebody makes some sense, and that is this Rahendra Gupta, adjunct professor of physics in the Faculty of Science at the University of Ottawa. So this is not a nobody, not some random YouTube theorist. But basically, we've been finding things like the Methuselah star, which of course they explained away. But essentially, the original calculations were that it was older than what we thought the universe was. And now we're finding these galaxies that don't make sense. Lots of them at the beginning of the universe. And the universe is supposed to be 13.797 billion years old, but it doesn't work. Not with the development of these galaxies. So essentially, his theory is that to explain the maturity of these galaxies and mass at the beginning of the universe, you have to have a hybrid. You can't just have redshift explaining you can't just have the expansion of the universe to explain redshift, excuse me. And so he puts this with like a hybrid between the expanding universe and an idea of tired light, which already existed. Zwicky's tired light theory proposes that the redshift of light from distant galaxies is due to the gradual loss of energy by photons over vast cosmic distances. And of course, I've also seen this explained by, there's gravity wells everywhere, and everything is connected by gravity, even loosely. So when you have photons of light traveling millions, hundreds of millions, billions of years across the galaxy, or across the universe, then the gravitational forces across that entire universe are going to pull on and tug and affect photons, and should essentially cause them to become tired, to gradually lose energy, to age basically. And when you combine that with the concept of expansion, you slow down expansion a little bit, you add in the tired light, you slow down the development of galaxies, because there's no way they're just whipping together in 300 million years, which is when stars should be forming. Then you have a more plausible explanation for why we're seeing these well-developed galaxies so early in the time frame, and that's because, in this theory, the universe is 26.7 billion years old, so almost twice as old, and I think that makes a lot more sense. So, I hate social media. Maybe that's not conducive for somebody who runs a YouTube channel and is trying to grow that, and want to get into doing some just chatting, streaming, things of that nature. But I didn't start using Twitter again, because I used it a lot previously, until about 2 years after I started doing YouTube. Maybe a year and a half or so. But for the first year and a half to 2 years, I was basically just doing YouTube. I've seen using other social medias as essentially a necessity, though. Something I had to do to complement YouTube. And in that time, I actually really like using Instagram. I think photo blogging and doing the reels and stuff like that, it all just kind of works as a good way to complement what I'm doing with YouTube. But I did start using Twitter more prolifically, and honestly, I can't stand that. I had a period of time where I went about 5 years without touching Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, social media of any kind. I would watch YouTube, but I wouldn't use any of that kind of stuff. And it was great. You really learn how much, even when you are not signed in, not getting notifications, not checking it, consciously, but you have so much of your mind power wrapped up in social media that you don't even know it. And unless you have spent a good amount of time with the apps deleted, logged out, maybe even accounts deleted, you just don't know. I can tell somebody this and they won't get it, because it's such a ingrained part of their person now. And I have been free of it in the past, and I very much enjoyed it. You live more in the moment. All of your communication is right here, right now, with the people at hand, or that you're talking to on the phone or whatever. And you can stay up on what's going on in the world. You can do your searches, you can be informed, but you don't have to be there for the knee-jerk reactions to everything. You don't have to be there for the hot takes on everything, and that's the worst of it. That's what really hurts our society at this point, I believe. Because instead of letting information develop, letting opinions steadily brew over time based on collected information and having all of the facts available, people see things and they react. Hot take. I've got to tweet this, I've got to post this on Facebook, whatever it is. And it's really not healthy. There's so many times where a piece of information comes out, or a controversy starts over some little thing, or the initial reaction to a thing can cause an uproar, and then later that day, an hour later, whatever it is, the whole truth comes out, the whole information becomes available, whatever it is, more details emerge, and those details don't matter anymore because everybody's already reacted. It's kind of a sad place to be. Anyways, Threads has launched. We all know this. I've talked about it in previous episodes, and I honestly find that it's a pretty good competitor to Twitter when it comes to function, but also because it also lacks a lot of things that Twitter does. And engagement is down and use is down from the massive launch, which is to be expected. There's always going to be hype for something and then it's going to die off, but then it'll stabilize. I'm sure Threads will, it's owned by Meta. This same people have Facebook and Instagram and all that. They'll be fine. They'll steadily improve the service. But I feel like Threads helped me quit Twitter. And now I don't really use Threads as much either. And I find that to be really awesome. I log into Twitter about once every 2 or 3 days, look at my notifications. I did private my account just because, you know what, I don't really feel like using it that much anymore. And I will see what a few people that I like on there, what they're saying, and then I'll log back out for several days. That's it. I'm good. I'll go on Threads most nights and I'll scroll and see what's there, respond to a few things, but then I'm also done there. I spend a lot more time on Instagram for sure, but overall, and I don't mean to say this like Threads isn't kind of cool and like it won't be successful or anything, but Threads' biggest use to me is essentially that it helped me quit Twitter. And now I don't really use Threads that much either. So I don't know. I feel like I'm a lessening burden of social media now. I was talking with a coworker after work today, and we're basically the same age. We were discussing collectibles and YouTube and things we had gathered and sold over the years and why. And she was talking about having some Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Magic cards, things like that, and how I've got this one and it's very valuable. I had so and so sign it. It's from the 90s, and which is really cool, by the way. But she said something, and it made me think of something I hadn't considered before. I've considered parts of this idea, but it's regarding nostalgia and nostalgia collecting. She had said, yeah, it's worth like $300 or whatnot. I haven't sold it, and well, it'll just keep getting more valuable over time. I agree with this. That's true. In many cases, these things will continue to get more valuable. Most things do, because age makes things more scarce. However, one thing you can lose is your target audience, is who might find the value in that thing. Now, granted, I'm in my 30s now, and in my 50s, I'll likely still value a lot of the same things. However, I'll be in a different phase of life where I may have already collected up those things. I may have bought them when I had the time, energy, and resources to do the collecting, and now they're on my shelf, or I've put them away and moved on, whatever's going on. So in general, yes, time creates scarcity, and scarcity makes things more valuable. However, when you're talking about collectibles, especially regarding Pokemon and Magic and trading cards, and then we were also talking about, I brought up Beanie Babies as the example. Remember when Beanie Babies were hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars for certain ones? Or what about Tickle Me Elmo, when that was just the biggest craze, worth so much money, nobody could get their hands on it? Well, those times have come and gone. And even though I feel like Pokemon and all these other trading card games and the collectibles associated with them and the video games and other fields as well will continue to become valuable, and more will be made and more fans of them will be made, there's something special about the time frame in which these things began and the people who were attached to it at the time, that grew up with it as kids when it was first a thing. You didn't necessarily inherit this from your older brother or your parent. You grew up with it. You discovered it when it first was new and something, a phenomenon. That creates a certain kind of bond. And now that when you hit like 30 plus or so as a millennial, and you were a part of that age in the 90s where these things were big, you go seeking those things out because now you have a little bit more money, you have the resources, and you have that sense of nostalgia for things from when your childhood, your teen years, whatever it was, and you go, I want to collect those things. I want to seek them out, and I'll pay pretty good money for them, sometimes a pretty high premium. So right now, if you are somebody who has some of these types of collectibles, some of these things, and you think, you know what, I may be able to part with them. I don't necessarily need all of this stuff. Maybe you want your collection to be a little more exclusive. Maybe you want to grow into some other new things, and you're looking to sell them. Now is probably the time to do so, while that nostalgia factor for the 90s and early 2000s is still a pretty big hitter with a certain demographic and age of people. Because yes, as I said, over time scarcity makes things more valuable. But eventually some of the people that are willing to pay a premium for those things will taper off. You'll kind of lose some of that market for it, and you won't be able to take advantage of it the same way you can now. I'm a collector. I have a passion for having these things, but I feel like as a collector, you also need to be able to let go of things, because eventually you just become a hoarder. I think I saw this comment on an old, like really old eBay forum post where somebody said the difference between a collector and a hoarder is a collector sells things. So you collect things, you enjoy the activity, and you keep certain things for yourself that mean things, but then you also turn around and put things back on the market for someone else who maybe can't find that or wants to get it from you. And it gives you resources to continue growing your collection in other ways. So right now is kind of the time for some of these things. That nostalgia factor that many millennials who have come up and decided to buy into their childhood, that phase will go away and they won't be in the market anymore. Thanks again for checking out Weekly Takes. If you enjoyed this mini-cast, please subscribe to the channel for more. Check out the playlist for past episodes. Leave a like, and if you have anything to say, any feedback, definitely leave a comment, and we'll see you next week.